tonight.
see who looks the most pensive and waiting for that first question.
So I want to welcome you all tonight and thank you for coming. Hopefully you guys have brought some really good, engaging questions about your own CVs or any general questions that you might have for our panel. I also want to let you know that if you need individual help with your CV, you can actually go upstairs to the Career Center and they can help you with that as well. They're located on the 3rd floor of this building. They have drop-in hours Monday through Friday from 1:30 to 3:45 in the afternoon. Also, tonight I will look over the attendance and I can send you all a CV packet that they have prepared, so that should be coming via email, so be on the lookout for that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to let our panelists introduce themselves, and then you guys are going to be able to open it up and ask whatever questions you might have. Everybody ready? Okay, go ahead.
All right, great to see everyone here this evening. My name is Kathy Headley. I'm Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies in the College of Health, Education, and Human Development. And for a short transition period, I'm also supporting the Eugene T. Moore School of Education. My background is literacy in particular.
Okay, I'm Joe Kuehlen. I'm Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies in Agriculture, Forestry, and Life Sciences. Been in this role for almost 6 years now. Was department chair before that, and faculty before that. And at some point way back there, I was sitting out there, probably in one of these seminars. And my background's in entomology, kind of applied management of crop pests.
Good evening. My name is Tanju Karanfil. I am the Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies in the College of Engineering and Science. I have been at Clemson for the past almost 20 years. I came here after my postdoc and started my academic career, and 20 years just passed. And my background is in environmental engineering. I serve as department chair, and for the past 1 year, I'm serving as one of my colleagues, Associate Dean for Research. Okay, what do you want to know from us? Or how we can answer your questions? Go on, sure.
I guess for entry-level CVs, I guess what really stands out? Would it be like the order of like where you put like manuscripts, awards, or I mean, what would you suggest to put? I mean, put like the first page. Should we load it up with manuscript published, or?
You know, I will tell you about some of the learning mistakes I've made along the way, and I think that's a good one to start with. And in terms of, one, make sure that what you do put is very clear. Think about your formatting. How are you going to organize your CV and stick with that? So make sure that the reviewer can find what they need to see for your work. So think about the position you're applying for, perhaps. What may be the key features of that position? What do you possess that may particularly hone into that? And you may want to be sure that on that first page you include something of that nature, and along with the regular identifying information of who you are and your educational experience. I mean, there's some just kind of some formats that are pretty normal, but you don't want that person to get off that first page without having seen some of the things that particularly have drawn and fit for you for the job. It may be some of your related work experiences. It could be some of your, particularly your educational experiences and what that brought to you in terms of your preparation. But what is that job particularly going to look for and make sure they find it?
I would agree with Kathy. I think that you need to focus it, so it depends on, what the job is. If you're finishing a PhD and you're going into academics, if it's a heavily teaching-oriented position versus a heavily research-oriented position, you want to rearrange things. And so if, like you mentioned, publications and those kind of things, if it's a research-oriented kind of position, I would kind of go with that up toward the front. I think you also need the background, where I got my degrees, what degrees I have, when I got them, those kind of things first, probably. And then kind of order it after that. And so if it's heavy research, I would put them kind of in the front of teaching kind of things or outreach kind of things. If it's a academic, like a liberal arts school that you're applying to, probably want to flip them around, but the teaching kind of activities that you've done up front.
I would agree with everything. So I think the message is clear that you need to do your research first before you put together. There is no one single CV that you can send everywhere. So if you're applying for a postdoc at the lab, maybe you may want to find out about what this position is about, and what type of skill set did you look at. Or if you are looking for an academic position in a research institution versus teaching, as indicated, emphasizing research over teaching order is important. Another thing is that I guess this is my personal preference. I like first impression very strong, so therefore I don't want to see anything misspelled, wrong, or not well presented in the first page at least. So because that quickly turned me on or off for this package basically. So therefore, just make sure that you are really, there's no really single format that you need to follow, but make sure consistent, clear, the document, like font sizes, font types, easy to read. If someone needs to scan your document, like I want to make a PDF and send to someone else, so therefore the CV should be really transmittable in good shape, doesn't change. So maybe sending a PDF can be a good one. But again, please make sure that it's well prepared on the first page. If you did your research and if you're really sure what this job is about, you can put an objective statement. Sometimes you see an objective statement at the top of the CV. At that statement, you can emphasize what this position is about. If it's a research scientist, then if you really want to do the research, maybe your objective or goal to identify and find a research position. Compared to a teaching position in a college, maybe that should be emphasized in the objective statement so that someone can understand what you are after, basically. So.
Follow up to that question. Should you include all experience in your CV, or should it just be tailored to the experiences that are relevant to the job you're applying for? For example, I know that gaps in work history don't look very well on a CV. But if I work part-time somewhere that doesn't really have anything to do with the job I'm looking for, it doesn't seem like it makes sense to be right there. So what's your opinion on how much of what we've done as far as experience-wise, job-wise, should be included? Is it everything, or should it just be the specific things related to that job?
Well, I guess, the most relevant material should be there for sure. That's really important. And also, that's why the research comes to play. For example, we are looking for research scientists which require that you use different analytical equipment, maintaining equipment, advising students and so forth, compared to a job where you are going to be teaching. So, like in the first case, for example, you took some analytical chemistry classes, you took some instrumentation workshop or continuing education, or you attended some seminars and so forth. You might not think that those are significant to put CV, but if the job is a research scientist and involve a good experimentalist, then those items needs to be in the CV basically. In terms of the time gaps, you cannot do too much about that. But of course it's a valid point. Like if someone hasn't done anything for 4 years in the area, there's a question mark that needs to be answered, and you won't be next to your CV to explain what the reason. So I will say if you can put anything that will be relevant for the job during that period, so it's not going to be seen you are idle or not doing anything with it, it will be good. But if you cannot do too much about it. So.
Well, and so mostly what I'm thinking is, most of the experiences that I've had that would be relevant to the job or the application would be in the last 4 or 5 years or so. So anything before that wouldn't be. So do I need to even include any of those things?
Actually, I would do from reverse chronological order, because really, to me, what you are doing in the last 2 or 3 years is the most important to me, because if you have done this work 20 years ago or 50, it won't be your case, but that's important. So I think the last 3 or 4 years is going to be the main area that everybody will look at closely.
Label it. if you're going to select related work experience, label it that above it, so that they know that it's not your entire work history, but it's what you feel for that position may be pertinent, and they're gonna do a background check on you. They're gonna find out where you worked and if you sold popcorn somewhere, you know, they're gonna know all of those things, but that doesn't have to be on your vita. So you may want to select those things most relevant that could go.
Actually, one thing maybe you can do, you can prepare a, what I call long CV with everything in it, which is your, I call master. And then you work from there, depending on position you're applying, what you're gonna really leave or what you're gonna put in the basic. But that's how I would do it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, is to just, start now, because most of you are fairly new in the graduate game, and just start building that master CV, so that, 20 years from now, when you decide you're tired of where you're working and you want to go someplace else, you can say, I have 50 publications, but you only list like the last 5 years worth or something. And so that's an easy way to keep track of things. And that's a good thing to do. But the other thing I was going to mention in there is kind of related to your question is usually you're not just sending a CV to somebody. There's usually a cover letter and those kind of things. And you can explain some of those things like gaps or why you were selling popcorn or whatever it was.
How it was related.
And how it was related, yeah, in the cover letter. If you were selling popcorn, there's probably some PR kind of things going on with it. And that might be a good thing to do.
I've sort of been scanning the crowd to see if my graduate student was attending or not, because I'm going to use her as an example for a minute. She's not here, so I can. She's in the administrative role I have, where I do a lot with assessment as well. And so there's a lot of different perspectives that we get from the office, but her area is a very different area than let's say my own personally, but certainly for the job. She is marvelous. She does a terrific job. But we've talked about how she will take this role, unrelated to her content, and how that might help her to present herself as unique. She's looking for an academic job. How many of you are interested in an academic role, in a faculty role at a university? Well, that's her pathway. So she's going to present herself up front for her research, her teaching and such as part of that academic faculty role. But the role that she's had in working with me for the last, 4 years, I believe, is that she's been part of our campus-wide assessment. She's actually helped to set up what we put all of our data into. She's had her hand in so many different things related to research, with graduate studies, with proposals and such, that she's going to have a paragraph that makes her unique, that says, I'm this content and I have a good background, I have publications, presentations in this content, but as a faculty member, here are other things I bring to the table too. It's going to help her have something that helps her stand out, to be a little bit different, and for, with her review, for them to look at the scholar she is and the researcher that she is and the teacher she's also proven to be. But she has this other element that's going to round out that faculty role, and I think will serve her well. So think about the things you're doing that you don't think may be related to your content, but how might that also help you in the role you're seeking? Certainly, I can envision faculty roles, but you may be going to a different line or a different position, but what do you do now that you didn't think was related to your area of expertise, but gosh, it could give you a little bit of uniqueness to pull you out of the crowd and say, here's what I possess, and you may not get this with anybody else.
And one more thing that I'd like to add, I think this shows it that it's time now for you to start building your credentials in different areas. Like I saw several people wants to go to academia for faculty position, and you know what a faculty member does. I mean, you teach, you research, you advise, scholarship, and so forth. So therefore, make sure that your portfolio has an example of these different tasks a faculty member will be doing. What that means to you, like if you have publications, get them published in peer-reviewed journals, so you can say, I can be a scholar. If there's opportunity, maybe you work with your advisor to write a research grant or to review research grant, review research papers, so at least you can say that there are a couple proposals that submitted, hopefully get funded, then it's a good credential. If you are involved advising grad students, that's great. If not, maybe ask your advisor to maybe supervise a couple of master's students. So I guess, that way you can put in your package many facets of an academic life to show that you are ready for the position. And that's the time, because the time that comes to write the CV will be just summary what you have done. But now you have time, and you are in school, and you really have the opportunity to build the things that you might be missing right now in your CV. So
I think it's beneficial too to just sit down and talk with your advisor, talk with other faculty members in the department, and get a feel for what they really do. Because most of the time when you see them, your faculty advisor, whatever, is teaching or doing research, or if you're in the ag side, maybe doing some extension outreach kind of things. But there's a lot of other stuff that a lot of times you never learn about until you get a job, and then you go, where did that come from? And so like Kathy said, if you have some opportunity to work with some of the assessment kind of things that, kind of nobody really wants to do, but everybody has to do, that's beneficial. If you have the opportunity to do some mentoring, working with a creative inquiry team, with your advisor, gives you great kind of leadership, organizational experience you can put on there and say, I supervised an undergraduate creative inquiry team of, 5, 6, whatever students for 2 years. That's something not a lot of people have coming out necessarily, and so that's a big benefit if you can put those kind of things in there. Other questions? Everybody's thinking about that cheese that's sitting out front. More cheese.
You mentioned this before, but so do you think a relevant coursework section is beneficial in your CV if it relates to the job that you're doing? I might not have ever worked a job where I use these skills, but I'm taking courses where I learn these skills, and I just haven't had a chance yet because I'm just now getting into the workforce. Is that something that would be beneficial to put in? A section on relevant coursework, like I took this course, this course, this course.
Well, some places also get a copy of the transcript, so they see the code numbers there, and not the full description. So again, if the job, like for example, we are applying for faculty position, and if you do your research, you'll find out that this person is expected to teach these courses in this department. So then, of course, you having some relevant teaching experience as a TA or part of the class, any form of similar courses will be a big plus, because then you say that, and also you write a teaching statement where but if you try to list all your 20 or 30 courses that you took, it can become sometimes heavy from a relevancy perspective for a position. So that's why I will be careful about to list all the courses that I took, because they will get that information anyway.
Well, I think that another related point to that, I think, is that today, compared to 20, 30 years ago when we were job hunting initially, it's easy to be a spy, right? And you can go on and you can see all the faculty in the department. Usually there's some kind of bio there. You can see their resumes. If they're, your position may be for X, to teach these courses, do this kind of work. But if you look through the department and say, there's a hole over here where maybe there's nobody in the department that has a statistics background, and you have 4 or 5 or whatever courses in statistics, that would be something worth pointing out, either in the letter or in the resume or something, that you can bring a little bit more than just teaching A and B, that kind of thing.
And definitely make your research. I mean, that's really important before you apply for a job. Don't send the CV blindly. To learn as much as possible about the position and what. And you can, you might have a friend in that department or a colleague, someone to call. So really, that training in the ground will really pay you back well when you put together your package.
So I've read CVs from established faculty, and including those that are within the administration here at the university. And so something I've noticed is, for like some of the key roles that they've had in their career, they do it more in a paragraph style where they describe what they've done. Now, when I look back in my undergrad resume and my current CV, I have it all bullet style, and I feel like most people in this classroom probably still use bullet style. Is that something where there's like kind of a transition in your career where you're expected to go more into paragraph form, or is it better to stay in more like the bullet format?
Well, just to give you an example from my own CV, until I start to serve in administrative positions, my CV were mostly bullets or line item publication and so forth, but the moment that you start to take some administrative responsibility, you start to do several things that are important but not necessarily can be put under different category in your CV. Like you generate funds, you develop, you involve in alumni activity, development activity, you maybe make an impact to grow your department student population. Some of those items, again, cannot be necessarily fit under your publication list or education experience and so forth. So that's how my CV evolved with time to those kind of sections to a little bit explain what I accomplished during administrative. But until then, I did not need myself those paragraph type of explanation. So.
I would agree. I applied for an administrative job, and today you can see the other candidates. So before you visit, everyone's info is posted. Not for faculty positions, but administrative positions. So I took a look, and they had exactly that. They had the kind of, again, and kind of the answer earlier about what do you want people to see, put it up front and early. Well, administratively, they had those narrative paragraphs. I still had a very faculty-dominated CV where I listed some of those particular roles and such. My cover letter was great, but it wasn't narrative on my CV. So I had to rethink of how I wanted to present myself. If I were going to look at administrative positions, what do I want people to see on those first pages of the CV? That cover letter, I think, is still vitally important because it does speak to your strengths. It also tailors to the site. But I needed to have had something there early on, the same advice that you got as well here. I mean, that's kind of one of those insights I found for myself.
My wife pointed that out to me. I was putting one together for an application, and it was for an administrative position. And I said, you know, she's an editor kind of, so I asked her if she'd proof it. She goes, well, there's nothing in here really about your administrative experience. You know, it's all research and teaching. I went, well, duh. Okay, so went back to the drawing board.
And
But it
also-
is more paragraph style
Yeah.
once you start talking about those kinds of things.
And also you see some of those style, like for example, if you work as a consultant in a company, you involve in several projects, and therefore that might be a place where you define the projects and you explain your role. So that's where you see consultants like several projects listed and they briefly describe their role. Or if you have a research staff at a research lab, again, you involve in several research projects where especially if you are working in large groups, so distinguish yourself what your role has been in the, like for example, if you work in medical field and so forth, really research groups are large. That's where you see people are listing projects and their role in those projects. But those are the places I saw some of those style use.
Thank you.
Would it be a good idea to put the publications that are under review or in preparation in the resume?
Under review, yes. In preparation, doesn't say too much. Because until someone submitted to the journal, you don't know. I mean, it's good in preparation, but if you put, let's say, 5 publications, 1 published, 2 under review, and 3 in preparation, I mean, probably I'll pay attention to the top 3 myself, because those are, I would say, complete and reach to a maturation. The others might have more time.
Create a different category for them. Have the ones that are published and in press together. We want to see what you've done. Create another category that's under review, so that you can move them when they are accepted. But under review, you know, you have to think about how many have been sent out and to where, and what's the likelihood of them being published. You want to show that productivity, but it still is in that kind of limbo land of what's going to happen. So I like to see them separated out. Again, clear and concise is what's going to help the reviewer, so that I can very definitely see what has been done, but then I also see what's been prepared and sent. But it, you know, it's still a little bit of a what will happen piece. So I like that separateness to it.
And one more thing that on those lines is that, like, in every discipline, we know the publications. By looking quickly at someone's resume and publication, which journal, which impact factor, I quickly develop my opinion on that person. And why I'm saying that, it's not important how many papers you publish. It's important that you publish good papers in good journals. Because if you have 10 papers in low impact factor journal, but instead 2 papers in premier journals with high impact factor, to me that has more value than a long, so it's quality really matters, quantity is not things that you should do.
And I think there is some variation in that. I think Andrew's an engineer, right?
Yeah, that's true. Please listen to these advices based on who we are.
Yeah, that's true. And it varies, I think, with discipline.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I know, like in our discipline, in ag, forestry, and life sciences, on the life science side, so you have biology, micro, genetics, biochem, those kind of things, it kind of swings that way. You know, they're looking at impact factors on journals and things. On the kind of ag and natural resource side of college, a lot of times they're looking at impact, but the things that are most impactful in publications may not be even on the list for impact factors in a journal. And just as an example that comes up regularly in our colleges, the people that work in cotton. You know, cotton is a huge crop, big, you know, production kind of thing, generates a lot of revenue for states and for farmers. The place to publish is the Beltwide Cotton Conference. And it's a non-refereed publication where everybody that's anybody in cotton goes to present their work. It's published as a non-refereed kind of publication, and everybody that's making money in cotton production reads it. But it's non-refereed, you know, but it's probably, from the ag side, it's probably one of the most impactful journals that's out there. But it doesn't show up on anybody's radar screen if you're looking for impact factors. So there is some discipline-specific nature to it.
I guess
But
what you are saying is like each discipline, by being in that discipline, you know where things count the most. It can be peer review conference proceeding, peer review journal, or some specific conferences. Being in that field, getting some advice from your advisor. I sometimes see the graduate student, I want to publish more paper. Maybe we can do 2 papers out of this paper if we get separate this data that way. But again, it's important that you publish in quality places of your discipline and profession. As I said, the experienced people, by looking at the resume quickly, by looking at publication record and activities, develop a judgment. It doesn't take more than 3 to 5 minutes for me to develop someone in my own field by looking at his resume, where that person stands and so forth, how this new person is coming out.
Now, and I want to say something about authorship for a minute related to that. And one of the things about your publications, particularly, and for our college, then education being a component, they're a unit now, but they were part of our college. But we have parks, recreation, tourism management, we have nursing, as well as public health sciences. And they're very different, all of them. But one of the things that we look for across both of those units is to have collaboration and interdisciplinary pieces, and we support that a lot in the college. So that's one of the things I look for in my career and different things that I touch and encounter is that I look for how people work together. Now, there's probably going to be a different answer to that. I look at a collaborative piece and I look to see where people are placed, because going into a project, it's important, I feel, to discuss who does what and some range of contribution. Now, there are other fields that do it more alphabetically, and that's less of pack that they have. So there may be differences there, but I think the key piece is, do you have work that shows that you were part of a team that was successful? And describe that. So I look for that. Again, it may be different in some of the fields.
Well, again, like, when you look at the CV, you look at the overall package. In other words, like someone has what? Peer review publication, conference proceeding, and so forth, right? If you are working in a group, you see that in the conference proceedings you are listed. They haven't become publication yet, but you are listed. But you see suddenly a paper, there is no past history of a conference paper, but suddenly your name appears as the fourth author on a paper. So it might be a good journal, but by looking at this picture, it will bring me a question, okay, really there is nothing seen in the resume this guy has involved, and suddenly his name in this paper with fourth place. So really, you're not going to get too much credit for that. But if you see that in the conference proceeding, there is a work going on, you are first, second author with several others, and then later you see a paper published in the journal. So it tells me where you stand in terms of the effort that you do. So that's why the whole package is evaluated, looked at together.
So you said that only the top quality journals should be preferred, but you might have a mixture, some is top and some is medium, so
Again, my recommendation to you is just always set yourself high bar to start with. I mean, we should all do that. And of course, I know that, am I publishing in a top journal? No, it's not always the case, because sometimes simply research doesn't provide the result that you like to see, or really sometimes not too much to report sometimes after all this effort. So, and also sometimes for any reason the data quality is not there, or data is not complete to be in touch. But what I'm saying is that when you build your career, hopefully you'll get 20, 30 papers, and then you see, okay, how many of these in high quality journals, how many in middle or low. So that's where you give the perception. If I suddenly see, out of 20, half of them are high impact factor journal, then it's a positive attitude toward it. But I see only 2 there, but the remaining 18 is really low, then it gives me a different idea about the person. So
some people are think that we should mention the impact factor of the journal on the CV. Is it correct, or only we should mention the name of the journal?
like in our field, we know most of the impact factor of the journals, mostly, I would say. So it's not necessarily, in my opinion.
In some multidisciplinary areas or interdisciplinary, even the people do not know the name of all the journals.
In that case, like for example, sometimes some centers look for research scientists where the package can be evaluated by biologists, engineer, chemists, a group of people. In that case, I think it can be informative because not everybody but it's more narrow discipline specific. You won't need that. But.
Yeah, I would agree, and I do think there is some discipline variation in there. And I know, like I said, the life science side in our college tends to include that. The ag and natural resource side doesn't. So I think there's some discipline differences.
There's been a lot of talk about publications, but how do publications versus work experience kind of like hold their weight on your CV? I'm in architecture, and so a lot of it's more project-based than paper-based. And so I was wondering how those in academia are viewed, like what their weight is, publications versus work experience.
Well, that's a great question. I don't know that I know the particular answer to it, but I think yours is a good example of knowing your field. And perhaps also the projects, who those may have been, who part of your group might have been, who are some of the lead people that you've worked with, what are some of the projects and companies. I mean, it becomes much more, your calling card then The impact factor has to do with your network of individuals, the scholars you learned from, as well as then the projects and what they were based on. You have a different impact factor in terms of the difference that it may make in the world we live in. So I think it's a different way to look at it, but you have a different way of publishing and showing what you do. It can't package in a nice little publication line, but you definitely have much more the narratives and the who's who and the what you did with that.
And I would assume, in architecture, you would have a CV that would have, your degree programs and what you did and those, kind of things on there. But my guess is if you're applying for a job, there's probably a kind of a portfolio or something that goes with it that's kind of the scholarship part that if you were, an engineer or a biologist or whatever, would be showing up in publications. So it's a different focus. And Mel was here, that's what he would probably say, right? He would say, oh, you can't count stuff because, we don't publish a lot in architecture, but we do all these projects. And so, I think, again, going back to working with your advisor, your advisory committee, how do you package it correctly for the job you're looking for? And it may be different if you're looking to go to an architectural firm versus an academic position in architecture. They may be looking for publications where a firm would be looking more for the portfolio. And I don't know that answer. Go knock on Kel's door.
I think the only thing we haven't mentioned particularly, and I'm trying to weigh this in so that even I'm getting tense up here thinking about, oh my gosh, all the things that you're going to have to look at in terms of applying for whatever role or job you may want, and how you're needing to get out the gate and being the best, right, and the brightest out there. But you have to have a place to start, and you build on that, and you get better. You don't go out and get a $1 million grant, as you've got to build that credibility. You've got to be part of a team. You've got to show what you can manage, and there's a whole lot of experience that comes even. And I'm still thinking about the academic role, and then this apply differently if you're in business and industry. But you still got to prove yourself. You need to work collaborative with a team in terms of has that credibility, brings that impact to show that, again, who you're networking with, what you're bringing to the table. You're going to have to build and work to gain that experience, that credibility, and it's not going to come overnight. But you have an opportunity while you're here in terms of showing that with others you work with the professors you have, et cetera. You have a way to build those experiences, and I encourage you to do so. Maybe you're part of a team that you're working on a grant. And it may be a small role, but maybe it's an important role, but you need to show, again, what that is. You've got to start somewhere and build and keep building.
I think there was another question of somewhere.
I was I was wondering if the number of the authors can affect the value of the application. I mean, if I'm a member of a team of 5 people or something, can that affect the importance or significance of that work?
But again, my opinion is that when you look at the overall package, overall list, reasonably, one would expect that for your work, you'll be the first author writing those papers. And for example, anything coming out from your dissertation, master or PhD and so forth, so you'll be expected to be the leading author. But there are other work that you were involved. Usually your order in the publication list is a measure or indication of how much you contributed to that work. So in large groups, of course, in some disciplines like 5, 10 authors, the first couple authors are important, and who's the corresponding author? Usually the advisors turn to be the corresponding author, which means that who really owns the job or responsible the job, basically. But sometimes, like for me, like for my senior doctoral students, who's going to go to academia, I let them to be the corresponding author as well, because they need to manage the projects. So, but again, in your resume, there should be a reasonable number of publications where you lead as first author, or you are the corresponding author to claim the credit for those works. For the others, it's good that you are part of the other teams. Depends on where your order is in the list, then you'll be judged probably accordingly.
As you mentioned about the impact factor, is there any limit for the impact factor?
Again, I brought this, the whole reason that I brought that topic is that we set high goal to ourselves and try to publish in good journals our work. Because think that you are spending all that time and energy and all those years to produce that work. So therefore at the end, you should try the best place that publication should show to the best you can. And I will admit that really, publication depends on several factors. We can hit to one or two really, really nasty reviewers. Because, for example, a couple of my highly cited publications were almost rejected by the journal because of one review. I remember at least one of them, we spent about a year on one paper to get accepted and back and forth with editor, but that paper turned to be one of the most cited of my paper in my career. But that paper could be rejected just because of that one nasty review. It took me about 1 year to really convince the reviewer and so forth. But try your best for best publication or highest place you can publish. If it doesn't happen, then, still publish somewhere, but should show it. So that's the whole point of it, about impact factor.
What about your professors that you work with? Does that go on your CV, or do you have a separate page for like references?
Usually under the advisor, under the dissertation, some people list their advisor name. That's one place. And the second place, your publication hopefully will carry on your advisor name. So when someone look at, that's what we do, quick look at the publication and see the list of the author, and then you recognize quickly the senior faculty member in your field, and okay, this is his student or her student, and it becomes obvious.
You do need to have a page that is separate from your CV, but is a part of it too, that you can kind of pull in and out as you need it, and that you list people in that reference list with their permission. Because you're not going to have to include letters, but there may be contacts, so that if you are getting to a narrowed list of interviewees, they're going to check with some of your references. So be sure you have their permission, and be sure you have that list ready, because that will be important.
And be sure they're going to be good.
Yeah.
Well, no, not for an academic position, but we were interviewing for a position just over the last month or so, and somebody listed 3 references when they were called to find out, how does this person work with people, all this kind of stuff. 2 of the 3 just panned them. I don't know why you would list somebody that's going to say you do a bad job. It happened. We had 2 out of 3, which is pretty weird.
And also the person should know you and your work. Because sometimes you list, for example, you want to apply for a job and there are a couple of famous faculty members in your department. It would be good to have them on your resume, but you have never worked with them, they were not in your committee, they were just another faculty member in your department. But because of their stature in the field, it looks good on your resume. So quickly by reading the recommendation letter, you can get a feeling how much that person knows the person and the work, because the level of specificity that the reference letter can provide can give that information. Because we all know that everybody tries to get some high impact names in their resume, but are they really associated or not? So that's why if you are gonna do that, it's good to start some communication with those faculty members earlier, not just 1 week before sending the resume, and at least communicate your work and the intention to list them so that they will know you more and they will write better letters for you.
I'm applying for PhD programs in communication studies, but I have no publications. So should I list in my resume like the research proposals I've done for my classes during my master's.
So you're applying to a PhD
Yes.
program?
Yeah, but I haven't published
Yeah.
anything during my, while I was doing my master's.
Yeah, if you're applying to a PhD program, I mean, having a publication from master is great, but if it's not really something that's critical because, you know, not every master thesis necessarily turn to be a publication, especially right away. But if you have any kind of research activities or for the PhD program that you're applying, it might be a group presentation, poster presentation, or a project, or any proposal that you can, I guess, claim the credentials that this is a work that I spent a good amount of time, I produced this output, and those are the things meaningful to show on the resume. About the class project, I will be careful about that because class material are more common. If you want to distinguish yourself from the others to be selected for the program, it will be preferential to list some unique work or some work that you can take credit itself. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I would say if you have anything like that, if you worked on, you know, like the student paper or the poetry thing here called, I forget what it's called. Like the publications for, you know, they do like a poetry art publication every year, Semantics, I think, is that what it is? You know, if you do those kind of things, or if you know, work for somebody in a business and we're writing, you know, ad copy or something like that, that would be, I think, important for that kind of position to look at going on to a PhD. But I would agree with Kenju, you know, a lot of times publications from master's programs aren't necessarily done by the time you finish, you know, so they're not there. But they probably will show up a year or two down the road sometime. Good thing to do while you're working on your PhD and have lots of spare time. That was a joke, right?
So you emphasized the importance of including people in the resume that support, you know, the network of researchers that you work with. And also mentioned that, you know, it might set you apart if you have worked with someone who is very well known in the field. How would you deal with perhaps an extreme example of that? So say for instance, you worked with like Matt Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs immediately before they started Facebook or Apple. And there's someone that you worked with and you did good work with, but there's no way that they're going to ever answer a call for a reference on that.
Well, at least, you know, you can, I mean, your part is to list them, and then, but of course, if you list them, that's why you contact the person, get the permission, and that person should be responsive to the request.
Yeah.
Because I understand that that person may not have time to write a long letter, but maybe can reply to an email. So therefore, any form of communication, if that person prefers, if you list, so therefore, but you are right that if you just put the name, because the references should show that they care about you and your career. So that's why they would like to assist with your job application. So if you put someone that's not accessible, not really, then it will not, I think I wouldn't list such a person on my resume.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe not as a reference, but you still have that experience, the work experience or such. I mean, that's something that's verifiable for what you were engaged with, but your references may be someone who's closer in and personally can. Because a lot goes into hiring someone. It's your work is important, but who you are in terms of what you bring to the, I'm going to use the word relationships, but is this a person you want to work with every day? You know, come to the job with? Is this a person who brings something extra? And you're going to have to be really, really good to be really bad, right? You're going to have to be someone that others can get along with. Because that's one of the features about retaining a job is that you can work with others and be a team member, et cetera, et cetera. So there's more to it than just the line on the curriculum vitae.
So let's say hypothetically you did work with Matt Zuckerberg. This is a hypothetical example, but on that level. And I mean, how would that's something that would definitely stand out, you know, as applicable. Say you do research in social networking. How would you list having worked with an individual like that? Is it something that would be permissible at all?
Well, like, if you take academia as an example, there should be other evidences. Just because, like, if you really work together on something, there should be a conference paper, there should be a presentation. I mean, even before a journal paper, there should, or your name on a grant that you work together. So therefore, there should be some pieces of evidence that showing that you and that person collaborated and worked together. And also, of course, if it's a grant, certain period of time or series of publication. So that's why, I mean, it's not just, that's why when you look at the name of the person in reference list, then you say, okay, what's the relationship here? Okay, probably it's one of his faculty members. Or, so and that's where actually maybe the cover letter or somewhere this can be explained. And at some CVs I saw that they put the name of the reference